For generations, the worst among us have contrived to tear our political and social fabric apart to the benefit of the few over the many. Their intent and mission have been diabolically simple: divide and conquer, and they have been wildly successful. Hi, I'm Michael James Ott, veteran, retired engineer and businessman, and now ambassador and facilitator for the solution to this madness: citizen statesmanship. The vast majority of people from all corners of the globe are just like you and me. Extraordinary, so-called ordinary people. Join us in our quest to recreate the political landscape, eliminating the tribal hostilities and warfare incited for centuries by the label and blame mantra of our traditional leaders. It's the Pro and Con Show, brought to you today and every day by Citizen Statesmanship, the cure for what ails us. Hey, welcome to the Pro and Con Show. I'm Michael James Ott.
And I'm David Smith, and we are the co-hosts for today's show.
Indubitably, we are the co-hosts.
Yeah.
And it is very important for us to say that this show is for everyone in every corner of the globe. All 8 billion of us extraordinary, ordinary people. And we have a wonderful show for you today. We want to talk about a diamond that we think we have in the democratic system here in this country. And it's not just here, but there's other countries that do the same thing. But it's called jury duty. And the title of today's show is Jury Duty, Real Democracy in Action.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Let's talk about it. So, David, we talked earlier about the show, before the show, but you don't really know anybody that's had any jury duty or anything.
My experience myself, I've never had jury duty. I've never gotten a letter for jury duty, so that's kind of unusual. Maybe some family members have or something, but maybe you can tell me some things of your experience with jury duty and
Sure.
And what you've
you've
encountered.
Right. It's funny because there's actually jury duty is something that's really special, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. But it is actually rare for people to actually serve on a jury. And you in the audience there, you think about, have you had to serve on a jury, or have you known anybody that has actually served? Not just gotten a little notice that you could be called to serve, maybe filled out a questionnaire but didn't do anything beyond that, which is the most common thing.
Now you have to call in, and the odds are you might not be called up anyway. Correct?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority, it's a huge, I don't know what
Pool
it
of
is.
people.
No, but that's one, is there's a huge pool of people and not that many juries that are called. But secondly, even if you end up on the list, there are very, very, very few cases that actually go to jury trial. They're almost always, they get settled somehow. Or whoever's involved, they elect to not have a jury. They elect to have a judge, sentence them or whatever. So this is the normal paradigm. But so I'm going to, just because we got some time here, just through my youth in history class, you had various U.S. history and stuff like that as you were growing up. At least where I grew up, the history teachers talked about the Constitution a couple of different times when I was growing up. And one of the jewels that they would specifically talk about was this thing called jury duty. Do you have any recollection of them talking, jury duty?
It's your civic duty to have jury duty.
Yeah, and at least my teachers would say this is really like a golden thing, or a diamond, because certainly about the time that the U.S. Constitution was being written, there weren't that many countries that offered this kind of thing where you truly had the equality of being judged by your peers.
Mm-hmm.
So it always had been kings or emperors or pharaohs.
They made the judgment
They
on
made the
you.
judgment. Or there's, they had the little feudal fiefdom places, with the dukes and all, and on and on and on and on and on. And, or they had like tribunals of judges, all kinds of stuff. But no, we, if you're really in serious trouble, or you really have something that's very serious in your life and it needs to be adjudicated somehow, you can demand that you are given a trial by jury. And and I just think it's, well, so then we were talking about how I think before the show you were mentioning you've known maybe some coworkers and stuff, and they said, well, this is how I got out of jury duty.
And the biggest complaint was, I don't get paid enough to do the jury duty, so I don't want to do the jury duty.
Yes,
It's like, oh my gosh. Well, if you're interested enough, which I wouldn't mind doing it, just to experience.
Yeah, it's one of those things that there's a lot of companies, and I don't know how many, but I know there's a lot of, including the companies that I work for. Mm-hmm. They, whether you had like a military service, like you were a reservist and you had to go into military service,
they have to grant.
They would give you, pay to make up for any lost pay, and then the same thing for jury duty. If you had to go for jury duty for a week or days or whatever, they would actually, if you had to submit the forms and say, I've done this, here's the court documents that say I was on the jury, then they would reimburse you whatever you missed.
You think it's sad though? I mean, I know it's not very much money. They pay you like $30 a day, which is kind of sad because jury duty should be something that we should all be able to do and be compensated and not punished for having to do jury duty.
And that's something that, we should probably look at and would look at, I think, if it were more common. But we should look at that. And in the future, when us extraordinary, ordinary people, I'm now calling us the EOP, not the GOP, not the Dems, we're the EOP, the extraordinary, ordinary people. Not to associate that we're a party, but we are we're together, right? We're doing this. So we would probably look at that and
people.
Extraordinary, ordinary people. EOP.
That works.
And so anyway, so going back to jury duty. So like I said, it was always presented to me like it was this fabulous thing that was really important for democracy. And I feel that way. And I didn't get any notices for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden I landed in Wisconsin and I was living there, and I got like 3 of them. And the first 2, I had to like call like the trial or whatever was supposed to start on Monday, and I was supposed to report on Monday, and you call Sunday night, and nope, didn't have to. But the 3rd time, I had to go.
Okay.
The 3rd time I had to go. So I had to go to the courthouse on a Monday morning at like 9 a.m. or something. And me and it was like 25 other people showed up.
What kind of a case was it?
It was a civil case. There was a famous, well, at least I heard of it, a famous case where this woman bought some McDonald's coffee. And it was so hot that it burned her. It like spilled in her lap or whatever, and it burned her. And she got awarded fame. This is my recollection. I don't know whether it's true or not. This is my recollection of it. But it was that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. In this case, a woman living in Wisconsin, and actually in the McDonald's that I had gone to personally on occasion. She had come in there during the winter and she had slipped on something and fallen and badly hurt one of her legs. Mm. And I don't remember whether it was her knee or her ankle or both or whatever, but she got badly hurt. And she had to have some surgeries and things and so on. So that was the case, was she wanted additional compensation for her injuries.
So it was safety related.
So it
followed
was
safety protocol, or
so what? That was what she was alleging, that they were reckless and whatever the other terms that they use in legal. I'm not going to try to remember everything that they said. But so here's the thing. So we go there, and they you know, it's a thing. You know, you go, and the judge and the lawyers are sitting there, and they ask you, they screen you, they vet you. And that screening, that vetting is solely about, are you going to be fair and impartial?
And how do they go about that?
They kind of just flat out ask, can you be fair and impartial? I mean, I think that is kind of like a standard question that I seem to remember everyone being asked. And then the other questions are kind of less direct. Like, well, have you ever been involved?
Have you ever slipped at a McDonald's?
Have you ever slipped and fallen at a McDonald's? Were you aware of this case, this famous case? And whatever you think of that case, is it going to alter how you might, act in this case? Those kinds of questions. So anyway, blah, 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 blah. And I got called. I was one of the 12. So the other people, once you get, typically they have 12, and then they have like 2 alternates. So 14 of you sit there for the trial in case somebody gets sick or something. And then, there you go. Now, thankfully for me, it was a fairly short trial. And my company, by the way, at the time, was one of the companies that would, compensate you. So I was basically there, and I was getting my normal pay and benefits and everything like I normally would. And so we did this, and the trial was interesting. It was fairly short. They had security camera videos, like you see on television. You watch whatever shows on television, reality TV shows. There's always like these grainy pictures of people walking around. And there was this, on the floor of this McDonald's, there's this white blob of something.
So this was their video evidence?
There's a white blob of something. And during the course of the video, because they showed us, it was like a 2-minute version of it, they showed us, and we had just other customers like walk by, and a couple of them like came really close to stepping on the white blob but didn't. And what is that white blob? Because it was so blurry, you couldn't tell what it was, right? And then there was an employee, they got the buckets on the wheels, and he's rolling the thing across the floor, and
he doesn't see the white blob,
and he doesn't stop and clean up the white blob, whatever it is. And then at one point, then the woman who got injured, you see her come into the frame, and she steps on the white blob, and she flips and does the banana peel kind of pratfall onto the floor, and then she's hurting and stuff, and you can tell she's in pain and crying and stuff like that, and people are helping her up. And so then there was just some testimony by the store manager about how they keep things clean or not keep things clean, and there was a sign there, a big one of the little tent signs that says
wet floor, except for the blob.
wet floor and all that other stuff. And it was other stuff. I don't even remember all the testimony, but along those lines. So anyway, finally we finish, and the judge says, okay, I'm going to give you instructions. They tell you what your job is. So in our case, they said, okay, McDonald's automatically, as company policy, any customer gets hurt on their property, they pay the hospital bills for their care. So McDonald's has already paid for and continues to pay for her ongoing physical therapy and stuff like that. So that's off the table. We're not talking about that. What we are talking about is, has she had additional mental and physical suffering? There's some other expenses that the couple, the man and the wife, have suffered because they've been taking her to hospitals and staying hotels and all that other stuff. So we have to decide that. So there's a list of 5 things. So and he gave us the instructions. Okay, it's now time for you to retire to the jury room and adjudicate this. So we go in there, and I don't know. I mean, we're not allowed to talk to each other until then. You're not at all allowed to talk to each other.
So you did converse once you got in there, though,
but
about
then,
the evidence.
But then you go in, and then it's time to talk. And we go in there, and it was so interesting. I had no idea. I think there were 7 women and 5 men on the panel. I had no idea what anyone was going to say. And we sat down at the table, and while we're sitting down, one of the women goes, "Did you notice she was wearing Crocs?" and the other women are like, "Yeah, what an idiot." And now I know what Crocs are. They're the rubber shoes, right? But apparently, I've never owned any, never really knew anybody that wore them a lot. But apparently, in ice and snow, they're incredibly slippery, is what the women were saying. I don't know it.
Yeah.
They universally said you're
slip-on plastic shoes.
Well, and there's apparently they don't grip very well on slippery surfaces. So they're like, what was she thinking? In a Wisconsin winter.
Oh, it's winter time.
Yes, Wisconsin winter.
Oh my gosh.
Running around with these Crocs on.
You know about winters, and I know about winters, and Crocs.
Well, I don't know Crocs. I mean, as far as I knew, they could have had just fine traction. I wouldn't have worn them because they're open and
they're a summertime.
Yeah, you would think
slipper.
But anyway, so we debated. We talked about what the white thing was, the white blob, and and on and on and on. And then it came down to, okay, now we got to decide. And there's like 5 points, and one of them was like, they have had an additional $548 from hotel bills because there was time where he had to go there to some distant place, and he had the husband.
Oh, okay.
The husband had.
Were they from there?
No.
Were they from Wisconsin?
Yeah, they're from Wisconsin, but they had to get treated at a hospital that was distant. So they had, they had some hotel bills, and so I wasn't the jury foreman, somebody else was. But they said, and by the way, if nothing else, a lot of you folks have never been in a jury, so at least you'll now know what kind of goes on. Mm-hmm. And I found it very interesting myself. So one of the things was, should they be compensated for these hotel bills? And we talked about yes. Okay. Another $548, whatever it was, for hotel bills. Yes. And then here's the thing. The fourth thing on the list was this statute about liability. And when the judge read it during the instructions, I'm like, what does that mean? It was like the most jumbled, convoluted, horribly written English thing ever. And I'm sitting there going,
how am I supposed to judge this?
And they provide a paper copy of it, so we can read it. I'm like, I hope I can figure out what the heck he just said, because it makes no sense to me.
So what did the other jurors say?
So we came down to item 4, which was verbatim this statute from the Wisconsin statutes, and blah, 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 something about liability and all this other stuff. And it was the most confusing thing. So we passed it around, we talked about it, we tried to figure out what it meant. And we were all just completely...
Were you able to go back and ask the judge?
Were we able to go back and ask the judge? Yeah. Good question. So once the jury foreman said, look, let's ask the judge. We'll write out a note and we'll hand it to the bailiff.
Well, at least you did the right thing, because you don't want to just say, okay, we don't understand this and we're going to do whatever.
Yeah. So we wrote a note, gave it to the bailiff. He came back, I don't know, it's like 15 or 20 minutes later, and he said, the judge says that you are to interpret the statute, and that is your job. And he cannot tell you what it means. Now, me personally, my opinion is, the reason why the judge said that is this thing was so badly written, he didn't know what it meant.
Wow.
And in subsequent conversations I've had with other people that are familiar with legislation that sometimes gets passed through state and national houses and stuff, sometimes they write these things like that so that some bad people at some point can manipulate it because you can't tell what it means. So you can argue that it means whatever, right? Mm-hmm. You can argue. And so in this case, this woman and her husband, were suing McDonald's. And if they'd had, $1 million lawyers, those $1 million lawyers might have pointed at that thing and just hammered it, with, hey, this means this, and and convinced the jury that it meant something. Our solution? Guess what our solution was?
What was your result?
We sat around, and again, I don't think it was the foreman that said this, but somebody on the table, was not me, someone at the table said, well, do we think she deserves additional compensation in any way, shape, or form? Beyond what we've already talked about. Does anybody at the table think that she deserves additional compensation? And the foreman said, yes, let's have a show of hands. Anybody think that she deserves additional compensation?
So you did a yes and no.
And everyone goes, no, we don't think so. And so then the foreman said, okay, well, then this is easy. We don't really care what this thing says.
Exactly. Good.
We're gonna just say no. We're giving you whatever, some hundreds of dollars for other things, and no. And so that was the final verdict. And so then you go out there, and then the foreman of the jury, has a note with the form, and the bailiff comes over and takes it up to the judge, and then the judge, so Mr. Foreman, this is your verdict, and you agree with what is written here? Yes, Your Honor, this is true. And anyway, so they read the verdict, and like I say, we compensated her some additional hundreds of dollars for various things, but it was not a big thing. We definitely was not a multi-million-dollar.
What were they asking for?
I think they wanted tens of thousands of dollars for distress and various other things.
Okay.
Lost wages and things like that, or whatever.
Well, it sounds like you guys came to a perfect verdict.
Well, I don't know.
Especially when you know what the white blob was.
But the thing, and just to go back to the real diamond part of it, is truly, it's us determining what is fair. Wow. And the other so here's the main comment I want to make about this and why I told the whole story. Well, one, I told you because many of you would never encounter this, so at least now you know. But two, I was so proud of the people in that jury room. There were, of course, people that when we were being seated and stuff, they were complaining, I'm missing work, da-da-da-da-da. Sure. Or, why did it have to be me? All these other things. But when it came to the trial and to go through step by step, everybody was extremely attentive, extremely professional, extremely vigilant in, understanding what was happening and paying, very close attention. And then when we got in the jury room, people were great. They were great about just working together and talking things through and trying to figure it out. And there was none of this partisan crap. Okay?
Ordinary people.
There was none of this partisan crap. There was nobody saying, well, I'd like to agree with you, jury member 6, but you're a Republican and I'm a Democrat. There was none of this.
It had nothing to do with politics.
There's nothing. It was just democracy in action. Beautiful, pure, and just like in the grade school when they taught us about this, it was beautiful. Beautiful, pure democracy in action. And so one of the reasons why we talk about this and why we're doing this show about jury duty is because citizen statesmanship then parallels jury duty.
So that's, I guess the next point is, how do we parallel that to what the citizen statesmanship is about?
Yeah.
So, jury duty and...
So what we're going to do then is, just think about it and try to think about what I just said, how jury duty works. So again, we started with a pool bigger than what we needed. And then those pool members were vetted to make sure they're fair and unbiased. And then they were assigned. They were told what their job was. They did their job to the best of their ability. Nothing less, nothing more. And then they went home. Oh, and at the end, there was one last part I forgot to say. We were retained until the end. After the court was over, the judge asked us to stay. And we went back to the jury room. And the judge, it was actually his first jury trial. And he came in, and he said, I just wanted to thank you. I just wanted to thank you people because, our trial system, our whole court system is just unbelievably important. And even though we don't have very many jury trials, the fact that is always an option is wildly important. And the way that you guys conducted yourselves, and he said, I just hope that regardless of, inconveniences in your life or whatever, I hope that you walk away from here, really embracing what you have done, that you've done great things here today. And I cannot thank you enough as the judge that was, in this particular trial for your work.
So I think the point of everything is that's kind of what we're here right now for.
That's what many years ago, I was, talking to a coworker, and he said serving in government should be like jury duty. And so it's this whole thing of having really good people, which the vast majority of us are, in government office.
And do you think that, I just to chime in, it has to be ordinary people. It can't be people that are...
it just needs to be, I think that...
Anybody.
And this is why why the comment that the fellow said before, it should be like jury duty because it's randomly selected. One of the major problems that we have is there's a horrible gauntlet, especially on the national level. It's not so much true if you're running for county council or something like that. But if you're going for one of the major positions in government, the gauntlet to try to get there is unbelievably horrible. And what that means is that the only people that are willing to go into the gauntlet are the worst of us. And we use this term all the time, narsoles, narcissistic, sociopathic a-holes. And it truly is. And there are truly bad, evil people in our country, and there's a very high concentration of them on the floor of the House of Representatives and in the Senate, and quite honestly, our presidents, plural, many, almost all of them, and probably almost every one of them are on the narsole scale somewhere. It's just a matter of how bad are they. So anyway, so how do we fix it? Well, we've got to change. Einstein once said, the very definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different outcome. And we hear people all the time talk about, oh God, please, we hope that tomorrow will be better, that we're going to head in a better way, because right now everyone's worried that we're headed in a bad way, and we are. So roughly, how would citizen statesmanship work? Okay, well, you'd have a random pool, roughly 10 times the number of people that you needed to elect into office that year, by district, right? So if you have a House of Representatives district, then you would get like 10 randomly selected people.
And how do these people get selected?
Be just like, again, we're just giving this general idea here. At some point, we would want to have like an amendment conference, because we need to amend the Constitution to basically be very specific about how we're going to get good people in government.
You could do the wrong thing, and then we end up with the same narsoles.
Yes, exactly. You have to be careful, because the narsoles are definitely going to be trying to figure out how to just get right
They're
back
not
in
just going to
office.
get pushed out.
No, they're going to be very
They're
clever.
gonna fight everything they want to do.
They're going to be very clever about trying to stop us. So anyway, so it's going to be like jury duty, and you randomly select, and I would propose similar to like normal jury duty. You would just get selected by the voter rolls or whatever. And then, just like jury duty, in jury duty, there's a questionnaire. Now for this, because it's a more significant role for a longer time, the questionnaire would be longer. And I don't know, we'd figure out what those questions are.
You would propose what, 4 years as?
Well, so me personally, I think, so there's one of two options in my mind. We either stay with the terms as they've been in the Constitution. So 2 years in the House of Representatives, 4 years for president, and 6 years in the Senate.
Okay.
And there's arguments for why that was a good idea back when the Constitution was written, and some of those arguments are still perfectly valid today. So maybe, the Senate, for example, being like a longer term, longer vision kind of look. So yes, maybe 6 years gives you that longer visibility, longer history, that kind of thing. Or I personally think that all you learn in government is how to be corrupt, and unfortunately, people will try to corrupt you. Right? When you think about it, once we force the narsoles out, they're going to be trying to just...
They're going to be talking in your ear.
They're going to be trying. Yeah. So the longer you're in office just increases the potential time that they might get to somebody. Mm-hmm. And so personally, I would just have 2-year terms for everything. Because here's the other thing that's true, though. In the new scenario, if you ever ask somebody, like me, somebody came up to me and said, well, what was jury duty like? Obviously, I'll tell you all about it. Happy to talk about it, right? And make recommendations or whatever. Well, that's going to be true for our government officials in the future. All this partisanship stuff is going to be gone. And so if you've just been elected to the 3rd District in South Carolina for the House of Representatives, and you're going to be able to say, well, Jim Smith down the street, he was, or not down the street, but over in Greenville or whatever, he was the district person 3 years, or 3 terms ago. I'm going to give him a call and ask him, this or that. Or you're wrestling with legislation today, but that the Congress had looked at it 6 years earlier or 8 years earlier. You would just call it, him or her. Hey, when you were in office, you guys were, wrestling with appropriations for the roads in the state or whatever it was, and what did you argue about back then? You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
And so it's going to be this much greater cooperative thing, like a jury, as opposed to this headbutting, political motivated, bullcrap that we have now. So this happens, and then so you fill in the forms, the questionnaires, and then the rest of us actually vet these people. So you just, there's a thing called ranked choice voting, but it would be something akin to that.
That's what I was going to ask. It almost sounds like ranked choice voting in a way.
So so now you have 10 candidates for the House of Representatives in the 3rd District, and their questionnaire answers are available to you as a voter. And you just read through them, and again, how detailed all this is and how much it is, I don't know. We're going to have to decide that. I am a regular person, folks. This is a great idea, But the specifics, we should agree, just like all the representatives back in 1780 or whatever got together and agreed about the Constitution. Mm-hmm. We should do the same thing for this amendment for how this would work. But anyway, just for concept's sake, you would, there's questionnaires, you look at it, okay, I like these people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we would all do that. And then whoever gets the most number one votes ends up going into the office. And then whoever gets the most number twos on average, whatever, then they would be a backup in case the first one had some issue. Died in office, maybe was found to be taking money from some of the narsoles and was, impeached by their fellow representatives and, forced out of their office or whatever might happen. And then of course they've got a job description, which is mostly just in the Constitution. It's pretty obvious what their intent was, and I don't think you need much more. You're supposed to be a representative for your district, and you're supposed to, represent the people in your district to the best of your ability.
Let me ask you this. So if these people are randomly picked, what if they decide they don't want to do it?
So that's one of our colleagues asked that question some days ago, and my reaction to it is, just like jury duty, you should be somewhat compelled to do it. Jury duty is fairly well compelled. You can't just walk in there and say, "I'm sorry, Judge, I don't feel like doing this." You're not allowed to do that because it's a civic duty.
Yeah.
We have to do this duty for each other. And even, like I said, even the people that complained about having to do the duty, once they did it.
That was my point. It was like once they were done, it was like, you know what? This was actually a good thing.
This was a good thing. And it's going to be a great thing. So instead of a judge figuring out, maybe there's a 5-person panel every election year. Again, the peers that are just randomly selected, and you can go if you like get to a place where they want you to participate in this, and you think you have valid excuses, then you go to this 5-person panel and you say, here's my excuses. Mm-hmm. And the panel votes, and simple majority says, yeah, thumbs up, we abide, that your excuse is a good one, you don't have to participate. Or sorry, you have to participate.
Yeah, if people are uncomfortable, that's good. You got to get out of your comfort zone.
It's one of the things that we humans, and I was in the military, but sometimes you just have to do things you have to do. And I mean, I use, it's not the greatest example, but a common example is we brush our teeth. If you don't brush your teeth, then you get all kinds of decay and plaque, and there's a whole laundry list of, if you really just don't take care of your teeth at all, you can get all kinds of bad infections and things, and that can actually be deadly. You can get all kinds of transference of that stuff, and you can die from not brushing your teeth. And this is the thing about democracy. If the citizens don't participate, democracy will die.
So how do we get people involved in the citizen statesmanship?
Okay. So
I mean, this is for the viewers. Everything sounds confusing a little bit.
Okay.
It does to me too.
Okay.
But it sounds like an excellent idea. So how do the viewers look at this and say, what do we do? How do we help?
So contact the show.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an email, freeequalfair@gmail.com. Contact the show, freeequalfair@gmail.com. Contact the show. We will talk to you at length about any questions that you have. If you want information, copies of whatever documents, things that we presented, we will provide any and all of that stuff. And step by step. And so we're doing that. And you and Ben and Mindy and others, we're going to be doing these podcasts, this being one of them. So whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on iHeartRadio or whatever, this is a mechanism, and you can encourage other people to listen to not only this podcast, but many others. We have a whole series of these things to really bring home, how this is going to work, why it is so much better than what we've had, and how great the future is going to be because we're doing this.
Yeah, I've got to stress that the biggest thing is we are extraordinary, ordinary people that are concerned about what's going on now, and we could sit around and do nothing all day. Or
exactly. We are again, if you want democracy, you have to participate, and only voting is not enough. It is not enough. Things are just not going well, and we've got to take control. I use this analogy: we're all on this bus, we're headed for a cliff, and only the worst among us have hold of the wheel, and they don't care about turning the bus. They just care about having their hands on the wheel. These are the narsoles, the irresponsible, horrible, self-centered, uncaring. These are the people that have the wheel, and we must turn the wheel. We have to turn the wheel. So you go and you serve. There's a job description. You serve, and then whatever the term is, 2 years or 4 years or 6 years or whatever it is, and then you're done. No re-elections of any kind. No re-elections of any kind. If you die in office or something, there's a backup that finishes your term for you. And then we have new elections because you want to have the term. You want to have new people all the time to minimize. This is one of the reasons why things are so bad right now. People you agree with this, I'm sure. They get into office and then they just stay there. And it becomes decades of decadence is what I call it. It becomes decades of decadence. And it's
called
just
the comfort zone.
It's just rot. It just causes rot and decay. And it's why we're in the bus headed toward the cliff instead of, a Disney vacation in Florida. We're headed toward the cliff instead. So you serve, you go home, and then the rest of us, we would know obviously who had served. And I was in the military at one time, so I'm a veteran. And people, what do they say when you walk up and someone says, "Oh, I was in the Navy"? What do you say to them?
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service. And we will do the same thing with these folks. We will thank you for your service, and they will done, and it's not going to be easy, but it's not going to be anywhere near as hard as people might imagine. Again, the gauntlet is going to be gone. All it is going to be regular people, and we are going to make sure that the people that are in office, are because we're regular people, we need to ensure that we're reasonably protected from being abused and harassed and stuff like that. Doesn't mean you still get questioned and stuff, of course, but we're going to be, we're going to be totally open. Here, you want to sit in on the discussions? C-SPAN, right? Instead of having the bills written in dark rooms, in smoke-filled rooms.
And nobody knows what's in the bill.
And no one knows what's in the bill, whatever. We're going to just have these open forums where we're going to be going, okay, this is what we think. This is what we're going to try to do. And it's going to be wide open.
At least it'll be a consensus of the people in the so-called jury duty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then as far as how we would get there, so as you imagine, and I think you mentioned this, you questioned this earlier, how do we actually get this implemented? Well, there's two ways in my mind. One is the historical way that major changes have happened in the history of our country. So, for example, the women's suffrage movement. Now, you may know that the women finally got the right to vote in 1920. They had to amend the Constitution. The government was not full of women. There was not a bunch of women representatives in the House and the Senate and in the Oval Office. None of that happened. But there were decades of greater and greater disturbance. marches, sit-ins, refusals to do work or whatever, until they finally caused enough pain that they forced the issue, and they got the vote. I was amazed. I mean, I knew it was some time. The women's suffrage movement, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think I am, started in 1850. So 70 years. Took women 70 years. Now, we hope, I don't think we have that long, anywhere near that long. So we hope that citizen statesmanship goes a lot quicker. But the thing that's true is, we're all affected by this. And some of the things we're going to talk in other shows, why there's real urgency about moving forward.
I think we know the urgency.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that don't.
Well,
And so, David, we're going to talk at length about why there's so much urgency, because there's a lot of reasons why we need to urgently change things.
mm-hmm.
And so we need to do that. And so that's one way, is to have this movement and force it. Okay. Another way, I think, is to have a mini citizen statesmanship thing. It's like the pilot. So we have an organization. There's committees of people organized by the Citizen Statesmanship Team in every state, and they randomly select people and ask them to participate. So we come up with a standard questionnaire, and we kind of do a mini citizen statesmanship, like a pilot version of it, kind of impromptu. But we select people at random. They fill in the same standard questionnaires, and then all of us, again with the database or whatever, we vote for people that we think are better. Same thing as we talk about. And then those people, we say, okay, Tom Jones. I'm terrible with coming up with stupid names. Tom Jones was the number one candidate from the citizen statesmanship pool. So we then throw all our support. We make it known that Tom Jones for the District 3 was the number one candidate, and we all vote for him. We help him get the signatures that he needs to be an independent candidate, and we say, Tom, you're the greatest. You're going to do this for us. Then they go. We're successful in doing that. We basically supplant, almost all of the current people in political office, and then one of their very first tasks is to talk about the amendment and passing the amendment and so on.
Yeah.
So that's the best two ways that I've come up with so far. So and okay, they're challenging, either one.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Sometimes democracy is challenging. You've got to, it doesn't change the fact that you got to do it. And this is one of the reasons why I think people still are amazed. I certainly am still amazed. The World War II generation and all the sacrifices that they made in order to make sure that the world was a better place. It was obviously going in a very bad place. Mm-hmm. With the Nazi, Third Reich and all that stuff happening. And the amazing thing is, after all that happened, and after the war was over, and because of our involvement, Germany and Japan, our sworn enemies, just a decade earlier, became some of our very closest allies for decades and decades, still to this day. And again, it just shows the difference between when the narsoul's in charge and influencing good people to do bad things, and then you say, no, we're going to push that away. And both the EOP in Germany and the EOP in Japan, the Extraordinary Ordinary People, just said, we're not having that again. That was a horrible thing that we did. Yeah,
we're going in a different direction.
We're not doing that again. Nevermore. We're not doing it. And I, in my work life, I've worked with the Germans. I lived in Germany for almost 3 years, and we had offices in Japan. I worked with many of the people in Japan. They are just like us. They're awesome. I mean, they look a little bit different from us. They talk, different language, but every bit the same as far as, honesty and willingness to be helpful and good and well-meaning and, name it. extraordinary, ordinary people.
Yep.
And but extraordinary, ordinary people that had a history in their countries that they knew they never wanted to repeat. And we...
Because they lived through it.
Because they lived through it. And we haven't lived through it. And even if we had, the time, there's so many generations now, humans have a tendency to forget history.
Exactly.
And we are bringing that up specifically so we don't forget history. Well, we should probably finish up the show. So you haven't any last questions about citizen statesmanship? We go ahead and finish the show.
Let's go ahead and finish the show. We've got another fantastic show.
Okay, we got one coming here. So as we wind up the show, we'd like to point out that we, all of us, are volunteers. We're facilitators and ambassadors for a better tomorrow. And that future is going to feature citizen statesmanship in elected, or citizen statesmen in elected offices in our government. And they will secure for us a much brighter tomorrow, free of hate, fear, and injustice. Because right now, the narsoles are the ones that are causing that. Not only are they taking money from us, the wealthy don't pay taxes and all this other stuff. And they've colluded to get all the money anyway.
These keep taking from us.
They keep taking, but they also take our lives, because we should be basically free and not completely carefree, but certainly free from hate, fear, and injustice. These things should not be like a normal care for us. And in these days, they're pumping it into the society like crazy. So we attest to the fact that you'll never see or hear about sponsors or advertising here on the show. We don't want your money. We don't want your time. We don't want your adoration. We want you to be focused on what is best for you and your closest friends. We want you to be wildly absorbed in that way, because we know that if you are really thinking about what is important for you and your future, there's a great chance that you will join us in recreating the political landscape and lead us to a much better place.
That's correct.
So write into the show at freeequalfair@gmail.com. We mentioned it earlier if you got questions or you want more information. And our next show is going to be freaking fantastic.
What's it called?
It's called The Man in the Mirror.
So join us for that
Join us.
show.
Join us.
All right, Michael.
Well done, David.
Thank you.
Let's go, folks.